Hello and welcome to another episode for my channel, Beyond Ourselves. Today I'm going to do a reading of a poem that I just wrote and published to my Substack called The Invisible Hand in the Garden. And I'm going to do something a little different afterwards. I'm going to do some kind of close reading of my own poem. Um, and kind of explain a little bit of the backstory and the context. I want to, instead of just offering uh, the poem and kind of just leaving it, completely to the reader to have their own experience, I want to do a little bit more of an active engagement with my own work as kind of a living document. So here we go. The Invisible Hand in the Garden. Rubies on her neck glisten as the mid-morning sun pierces through the stained glass window pane. Her garden boy steals a glance, peering up as she takes off her silky satin dress, wishing it was he who could run his hands through her golden locks. Then he feels his own hands, blisters the size of craters, sandpaper rough palms, and went back to pruning the hedges. The woman floats down the stairs and fans herself at a nearby bench. Her butler delivers a sweet tea, perfect for a summer's day. Gripping thorny thistles, yanking stubborn roots, even if done well, the woman will only notice the peach roses. As he takes off his gloves, he looks out at the rose garden. That one rose bush in the corner that was blocked by a thistle stalk now shines in the setting sun's glow. He runs a finger through his cracked palm and smiles. So, this poem kind of came to me last night. I was thinking about and reflecting on some of the jobs that I've had, and part of the job that I currently have involve weeding. And right now, I do a lot of poison oak removal. I'm a nature school preschool teacher, and so I'm involved in some land management for the property that we're on, which has a lot of poison oak and a lot of Cape Myrtle ivy that just grow rampantly on the land and really present a lot of problems to the natives, and then obviously the poison oak to all the kids and the staff. And a couple of years ago, I worked in vegetation management, specifically invasive species removal, out at Grand Tetons National Park in Wyoming. And did a lot of herbicide spraying and manual picking of weeds, lots of thistles, which feature in the poem. And there was a specific image that came to me of, I mean, it was kind of symbolic of a lot of days. It wasn't a specific memory. It was kind of something that repeated um, a lot of times while I was in Wyoming. And it was of my crew and I, working in these massive plots of land. And the way Grand Teton National Park is structured is there's really only two main highways that go through the park. And so we were working, our first big project was like right off of the highway, right by a regional airport there. And and it was during the summertime, so like the highest volume season, peak season, and there'd be all these cars passing, and we'd be like right off the road, spraying herbicide, trying to control this terrible species of brome grass that was brought over by the Europeans, and trying to revitalize the sagebrush population, which is like is such a keystone species that's a food source for uh, so many different animals, and particularly a species of grouse. And their numbers have been plummeting, and so we were, trying to revitalize their habitat. And it just occurred to me sometimes during the day we'd be out there, you know, basically 8 till like 5 every day, carrying these 3-gallon packs on our backs. And there would just be people, passing every day, on the way to their hike, to their dip in the lake. And it was this feeling of kind of like invisibility, like invisibility for what we were doing, for what we were protecting, that they were enjoying. Um, a lot of times feeling invisible to our own supervisors and bosses, of the level of toiling that we were doing. Um, but yet the importance of our work, and how actually like constantly reminding myself of that kept me on the days that were physically grueling, that were mentally taxing, um, where it felt like, our work was kind of futile, working in invasive species management a lot of times. And I've, in subsequent jobs, been around people who work in it. It's like it can oftentimes be a very kind of depressing experience, because the reality is it is almost impossible to completely eradicate an invasive species, especially one that's been instantiated in a particular area for centuries. It might even be treatment resistant to herbicides. It's certainly um, evolved to, have these incredibly thick roots. Like recently, I just saw what a poison oak root, or sorry, ivy root looks like, and it's like the thickness of a tree branch. It's incredible. Um, and so it's like this work that no one really notices, that no one likes to do, um, and is one that is oftentimes like darn near impossible. And what the psychological reality of, and then I came up with this story of, this gardener who works for this, like, really wealthy person on this, huge estate, and how, she's just the epitome of beauty and decadence, right? Um, and pays no mind. And if she was aware, would probably be kind of like repulsed by weeds and weeding, and getting your hands dirty, and what the gardener's hands look like, right? Um, but as I was writing it, I was thinking about how necessary the gardener's role is to perpetuating the beauty that the woman basks in. Um, that for it, not for his efforts, the thistles would completely overtake the rose bushes. Um, and I personally think there's a beauty to thistles. Their flowers are really gorgeous, but it's not something you can walk through because they're so thorny. Um, and I wanted to communicate the beauty of toil and being in the trenches, and how for the gardener, he actually has a level of depth of understanding of beauty as something that isn't something that can just be taken for granted. You know, the last stanza really um communicates that as he takes off his gloves, he looks out at the rose garden, that one rose bush in the corner that was blocked by a thistle stalk now shines in the setting sun's glow. And the woman might notice that, she might not notice that, but he really knows. If it weren't for me, this corner of beauty would not be able to shine forth. And so, the idea that like beauty needs constant tending to and uh, management is maybe not the right word, but like attention. Um, and there's a removal of the participation in that when you're just kind of sitting on the bench getting your sweet tea from someone else and kind of appreciating it. Um, that's certainly something that I have come to understand working in national parks and in conservation is like if you take your eye off the ball for a week, a day, even in some instances, like things will be overgrown. Trees will fall on trails, and if they're not picked up, then that trail has to be closed. Um, you know, Invasive species have to be controlled and mitigated. Natives have to be watered and planted in the right spots and things. And I love the last line. He runs a finger through his cracked palm and smiles, and how he evolves from um, the relationship he had with his hand earlier in the poem, which was one of kind of shame of, ooh, if a woman felt the touch of this, she would be uncomfortable. It would feel like taking sandpaper and rubbing it on someone's shoulder. What type of woman would want that? To at the end having pride in that because of of what it's the result of, that it's the result of this work that he's proud of. Um, and yeah, it felt like kind of an appreciation post for all the people that I've met who work in these fields that are so hard and get so little recognition. It's one of those things that it's like when done well, no one knows about it, and when done poorly or not done at all, everyone suffers for it. Um, some people like think of parenting that way. Um, when you're a good parent, like your kid's not going to tell you that. When they're young, they have too much pride. Um, but if you're a bad parent, they'll definitely let you know. And so it's kind of this like thankless job is what I've experienced it to be. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of that feels complete for kind of the uh the backstory and the context of the poem. Um, I um I sent this poem to a online um, poetics forum that I'm a part of. And someone commented that they loved the restraint of this poem, that they felt like there was a lot that was unsaid. And I so appreciate them saying that because while, that wasn't necessarily an intention for this poem, I've often struggled with showing and not telling in my work and trusting that a simple story told well is just as powerful as using a lot of vivid imagery and descriptors and um, what I think is complex plot, you know. Um, and the writing of this poem was because most of my poems, I'm less I'm less focused on telling a narrative as opposed to revealing a certain quality of experience. And not to say that this one wasn't that, but it was more of a story than most of my poems. And I think and I was really trying to have the lines be short and readable, not for it just to be kind of like a word vomity prose thing that probably should be a story, but I was kind of just too lazy to put it into a story, so I call it a poem. Like I really wanted it to feel like a poem, um, but also a story. And I think I was really happy with kind of how that happened. And I think because this is a story that's kind of like a snapshot into daily life, like la vie quotidienne of kind of just this very ordinary scene. Um, it didn't feel right to have it be complex, and decadent, and it felt like what was asked of me was to tell something simply and trust that the story had enough meat on it to not need extra, you know, confetti on top. Um, so that's my poem and a little bit of exploration around it. And please feel free to comment anything that's alive for you to comment that resonated with you, a question that you might have. And I think I'll do more of these kind of style of videos with my poems in the future. All right, till next time.